Okay, everyone, it looks like there's a calm in the air and group dynamics. That's usually a good time to start. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mary Raum. I'm from the United States Naval War College and the co-chair for this event this year at Watson. And Dr. Susan Moffitt is the co-colleague this year, so we're real happy to be here. And Susan, we're going to start out with you, and then I'll show you a short video from the War College, and then we'll have our keynote address. Thank you very much for coming, and welcome.
And welcome to Brown University's Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs. I'm Dr. Susan Moffitt. I'm the director of the Taubman Center for American Politics and Policy, one of the centers that resides here within the Watson Institute. Welcome to our distinguished guests. Welcome all. We're delighted to have you here. And I'd like to begin by saying a deep thank you to the staff of the Watson Institute who really made this conference possible. So a special thanks to Christine Kilgus, to Kelsey Powell, to John Mazza, to Alex Ferrier, and to the Director of Communications at the Watson Institute, Catherine Dunkelman. Thanks to all of them for their hard work. The research and programming at the Taubman Center focuses on three themes: the cost of living, the value of democracy, and the price of security. The annual Women, Peace, and Security Conference speaks very nicely to these themes and to the ways in which they intersect. And even though we are a center that focuses on American politics and policy, we do so in a global context, meaning we think about the reverberating impact of American politics and policy globally, but we also look to learn from our global partners on how to address enduring challenges in the United States. And the conversations we're going to be having over the course of these next 2 days are well positioned to help us in those respects. Of course, this would not have been possible without the vision and leadership of Dr. Mary Raum. The Watson Institute and the Taubman Center are deeply grateful to Mary and honored to be partnering with the Naval War College in this effort. Could you all join me in thanking Mary for her hard work? So thank you.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. As I said, his full biography is in the program, but when you think about women, peace, and security, when you think about these kind of non-traditional security issues, one of the countries that lead the way in this space is Canada. And we have one of the champions today with us. So our keynote speaker is Rear Admiral Luc Cassivi. In his biography, he has extensive surface and submarine experience. He's naturally commanded ships at sea. He has been in charge of the fleet, and he's had numerous staff and training type leadership roles. His current position is Military Personnel Generation and Canadian Defense Academy Commander. And in that role, he's poised to talk to these issues. As I mentioned, he's a champion. He's going to talk to us a little bit about Canada and the military, his experience, and his personal advocacy in this space. So welcome, sir.
Alors, bonjour à tous. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. I'm French. I thought I would start that way because when I came to Rhode Island, I was told by local historians that in Newport, after the French occupation, there was a feeling that people were better off under the French leadership in the area. So I didn't know if that culture had spread out outside of Newport. I'm glad to be back. It's great to be here as an honorary resident of the great state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. I've had a great year when I was at the War College and really appreciate the opportunity to come back. Thanks to the War College, Brown University, our two friends, Mary and Susan particularly, and our distinguished guests today, Yuri, Alberto, and Rocky. It's great to have you here with us. And I'm looking forward to a great conference. So where we go has a lot to do with where we come from. So today in history, to start, just to get people freshen up. 1879, New York, Madison Square Garden opens its door for the first time. We have a lot of disruptive weather going on right now. 1889, unfortunately, Johnston, Pennsylvania is destroyed by a great massive flood. On good news, in 1902, the Boer War ends with the Treaty of Werningen. I always had a problem pronouncing that one, but it's a nice treaty. But most important to a lot of people here in this class, 1913, 17th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was ratified. What's the 17th Amendment? Anyone? It is actually, most right in the direct election of senators, actually. But there you go. And who was born today in 1930? Clint Eastwood, sorry. So, a great actor, a great American. Right. So why am I here today? It's great to be invited first. I have two main roles in my duties in Canada right now. The first is principally as a commander of the Canadian Academy, I run the education system for the Canadian military. So entry level for officers and non-commissioned officers, as well as the entire leadership development program through to general officer and flag rank. So a huge responsibility. We own the framework and we revise it regularly. So anything that has to do with cultural change, institutional change, I have a great role with my team to implement that into our education system to ensure that we have success at the other end. The other piece that I'm here as a champion, we have a number of champions within the organization, but we've tried to modernize championship in the organization. I work with a group of very dynamic co-champions, and we're a group of 6 that look after everything that has to do with gender integration within the military, women, peace, and security. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward into the presentation. So we're really blessed. Every year that I wake up in Canada, I feel like I won the lottery. We're blessed with a great country that is peaceful, where people can follow their dreams for the most part, where we see less of poverty, although we still see a fair bit. For the most part, secure communities and people who can become all that they can be. It's not the case all around the world, and we acknowledge that every time we go on operations around the world. We see that challenge. I saw it as a young naval officer traveling around the world. And a bit of what we're talking about here is all centered around this. How do we make the world a better place? Our defense policy that was tabled almost a year ago was an important marker for us in our history. Since I started in the military 35 years ago, we've always been on a path where resources were getting constrained. We had to do more with less. We had to shave the ice cube. We had to make decisions about resources and commitment and what it all meant. We now have a defense policy that sets us on a 20-year path of expansion, meaning a realization that we had reduced the effectiveness of our military to a point that was unacceptable. For our own security and our role in the international scene, we needed to reinvest in our defense force to be able to live up to our commitment. That's going to take us a while to get adjusted. We're not used to growing, and if you're not used to growing, you won't grow right. You can grow wrong very quickly. So we're going to apply a lot of discipline to that. But one of the big change that we saw in that defense policy is where we put our priorities. Most defense policies around the world start with, here's the operating environment, here's what it means. We need more gadgets, we need more capabilities, we need more weaponry, and then we talk about people. And we say, well, but people are our greatest resource. And a lot of times we end up in a position because we want to get the equipment, because we need it, because of the operating environment. When it gets to investing in the people, we fall a little short. Our policy has shifted that paradigm around, and chapter 1 is about people. And it's all that we want to do about people. Recognize that people are our greatest asset. And if we don't put our proverbial foot where our mouth is, we're going to lose the trust of our people, and we're not going to be able to grow. We're not just growing in money and in equipment, but we want to grow in people, and we want to go into diverse people. We want to tap into the power of the diversity of the Canadian population. So I'm going to talk about diversity and inclusiveness a little bit, because that's one of the pieces as a champion that I'm focused on. My official title is Champion for Gender and Diversity for Operations. We have tried for a long time to set a message in Canada about why diversity is important. Diversity is, as we started talking about diversity, our experience was really about having more women in the defense environment. And then it's changed through time to a lot of the elements of our community, the whole tapestry of diversity in our community. Okay, I am, that hasn't changed. I'm an openly gay member of the military. When I joined, that wasn't appreciated. It took a while for things to change. We did a little earlier than here, but we did it. And you know, I spent years, like many of my colleague female that were joining the ranks, to get those microaggressions and to feel like, what am I doing? I really want to serve my country, but I don't feel like this place wants me here in the way it reacts and the way it around me and around who I am in my community. I would say that every community that is not traditional white Anglo-Saxon male in Canada, as they started in the military, had that same experience. We've evolved beyond that, but not completely. There's still pockets of it that happen, but there's still great difficulties for folks to see themselves in the organization and feel that they have a place that they can contribute and they can make a worthwhile contribution. We need to change that, because that is what's going to limit our power. It's the same thematic moving forward to an inclusive environment that allows us to make women, peace, security principles a reality. And we really need to work on this principle of inclusiveness. We've been talking about it for a long time. We'll continue to talk about it a long time. But it is still a very difficult conversation to have for probably two major cultural factors that I can see. First is, you know, there's been decades and decades and centuries of masculinization of the warrior trait, for lack of better terms. It was not always the case in our history, and it's a misconception in a lot of ways. We don't spend enough energy to show the example of female leadership in the security environment within our War College and equivalents around the world. And as a consequence, we have this misconception of the true role, the full role of women within what we do. That's one aspect. The second one, I think that is another obstacle, is what I wear today. Okay, the uniform as a principle, make us all look alike. I can look at anyone in the armed forces back home, look at their cap badge, I look at their rank, and I say, oh, you're a sergeant in this regiment, you're trained to do this, this, and this. I already have that image, and that's what I see in that person. I don't see the human potential, the complete human potential. It's an obstacle to visualizing elements, and it's a cultural piece of what is their cultural intelligence, what is their religious intelligence, what is the linguistic intelligence, what can they bring to the table for us in a spirit of inclusive leadership, and to get better input, better knowledge into the preparation and execution of operations. And that's why my title of champion as for operations. Because we've used for years the label that we need to represent Canadian society as a military. You know what? That doesn't resonate very well. Because the image that folks inside the organization get into, oh, this is an employment equity problem. Oh, you just want quotas, you want a percentage, you know, so we need to have so many percentage of women, visible minorities, or whatever else. But it's really not about that. We need to change that language, because it's not resonating. It is an obstacle to positive recruiting. It is an obstacle to the actualization of that inclusiveness and that inclusive leadership within the workplace. Okay? It is really about being able to tap into the full spectrum of human potential that exists in our society that can contribute to the security environment and make the world a better place. Our leaders are a little tired. They're a little tired for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons they're tired is we seem to lack a cohesive long-term approach to security problem. And as a result, we seem to be creating recurring employment for our defense forces as opposed to achieving positive results in peace and security in different environments. That's why inclusive leadership in the planning and in the execution, not just in the military. The military has a purpose. It has a purpose to bring a form of order out of complete chaos and set conditions for the rest of the apparatus of national power to create a secure environment, a prosperous environment, the structures required for people to contribute and make their part of the world a better place. We need to evolve the conversation of women, peace, and security beyond the military realm. I'm glad there's less uniform here. I'm glad that we're here at this center because it's very much about foreign policy, government policy, strategy, and long-term vision as to what we see as the need for peace and security. And that is the spirit under which I believe that UNSCR 1325 and all those that followed have at the crux of it. And I think that's important for us to do. What is Canada doing beyond the policy and investing in our people? Because, we'll use another naval analogy. A ship is just a bunch of metal until you put a crew in it that works cohesively, that works together, that listen to each other, and that can deliver the full potential of that instrument of power. It's the same for everything. It's about our people. We need to invest in them. Last November in Vancouver, Canada hosted the UN Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial Conference, and a few key initiatives were announced there. It was a great event. I had the chance to go for one day. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford being there much longer. Got to meet Angelina Jolie. I've always been a fan. Lara Croft rocks, as far as I'm concerned. She was one of my heroes, and it was great to meet her and to see a group of people come together and really realize we need to do things better. So 2 key announcements that came. The first one, which you probably have heard of already, is the Elsi Initiative, which is being led. It was announced by our Prime Minister, Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, our great feminist Prime Minister, and he's proud of it, and he should be. And the goal of the initiative is really to be able to encourage the improvement of contribution of women into peacekeeping operations. So it was announced. What has happened since? So the lead agency is Global Affairs Canada, our Foreign Affairs Department. We have started, and the whole national security apparatus is involved. Royal Canadian Mounted Police, other policing community, military, and advocates around academia to try to scratch as to how can we achieve these goals. And ultimately, to achieve that, we need some reform, we need some encouragement, but it's like anything, if you don't put resources to help, then it gets really nowhere. So the main components of the Elsi initiatives as followed is trying to develop a way to provide technical assistance packages to 1 or 2 partner nations that want to move forward on this, and that will include some advice for military and policing forces, training, mentoring for those involved, recruiting support, and the provision of non-lethal equipment necessary in that environment. The second one is providing a financial mechanism to help provide assistance to these countries. We've committed 15 million Canadian to that, and the framework in which countries can tap into that money is being developed. So it'll take us about another year to year and a half to develop that framework to to making it happen, and also a commitment to some research and development to look at the better ways and the best practices, innovation to be able to achieve these goals. So I think that's very exciting to see, and maybe there's some of these that we'll be able to tap in ourselves from a lesson learned and best practice, because we also have our challenges in encouraging women, for example, to join our defense force. The other commitment was from the chiefs of defense. And the chiefs of defense that were present were all very much committed to achieving the goals of UNCR 1325 and those who followed. And they say, but we're not optimized in our way to communicate to achieve that. So the goal has been to create a network of those chiefs of defense to be able to exchange at the highest level best practices and put attention there, so that, you know, the whole saying, what your boss is really passionate about, everybody else will be interested in. And it's to drive that kind of dynamic to try to move forward our efforts. So the United Kingdom is taking leadership for the first year, and Canada is committed to take the lead for the next calendar year, which means that since I work directly for the Chief of Defense Staff Canada, and that I'm the champion for gender diversity, I'll have, me and my team will have a bit of work to support that piece, and we're gonna work at putting that together. But we need to share those practices and elevate the dialogue, otherwise we're gonna continue to have problems in that line. So in defense policy, I'll go back to our defense policy to bring that on, is we made a clear commitment to diversity, and I want to finish my introductory remark in that line, okay? Most institutions have been committed to diversity for a long time. It's been a brand that people are using or for recruitment, for bringing talent to them. But there's a question that really becomes critical, is what is diversity in that framework? Is diversity an output? I believe it is. Diversity is the result of something, and it's the result of being inclusive. You can attract diversity, you can have numbers that say you're diverse. Are you retaining them? Are you including them? Do they feel they have a future? Do they rise? Do they advance at the same pace, or do they face bias? Do they face roadblocks in being able to achieve their full potential in the organizations in which they belong? So we want to address that particular issue, because we believe that, well, I personally believe that culture of inclusiveness is still something we struggle with. And that aligns very much with the One Peace and Security agenda when we looked at the brilliant video and the comments about we're not including the 50% of the population. We're not hearing their voice at the table. We're not, you know, in the military, you know, a lot, you get into a group, the alpha dog, the one who speaks the most, will cover the entire bandwidth regardless of the quality of what is being said. And the person with a great idea, they'll say, you know, 2 sentences in between there that has the moment of brilliancy, will likely not be the alpha dog, will be one of these groups of diversity that exists that say they don't speak often. When they speak, you should bloody well listen, because what they say is smart, intelligent, and accurate. So we need to work through these pieces. That's part of the military culture, but we need to create that environment of inclusiveness. So we're kind of resetting a little bit of our teaching and our education framework around going back to basics. It's actually going back to our code of ethics. We have the foundation of our code of ethics is pretty simple. 3 tenets: respect the dignity of all persons, duty before self, and obey all lawful orders. Okay, it's pretty simple. You can remember them very easily, and you can use them all the time when you address folks and you're trying to highlight why we failed, why we had a problem, Why we need to reset? Well, we failed to live up to one of those three things. Inclusiveness, success in operations, success in the way you plan an operation, go there and try to bring order out of chaos, had a lot to do about the first one. If you don't respect yourself as a team, if you don't respect the community in which you're intervening, if you don't respect the elements of that community and respect the dignity of all these persons, you will not, one, get the best solution space to bring order out of chaos. You will not have the right instrument to bring stability in the area to allow development and stability to endure beyond the intervention. It's fairly logical. It's very simple. We've been teaching these ethical principles for a while, but ethics is something people don't like to talk about a lot on a day-to-day basis. And actually, when I did a revision of our ethics training that folks use at the unit level to talk about ethical problem, and it has a lot to do with, someone claimed a meal they weren't supposed to when they did their travel. So we bring ethics at such a simplistic level, a transactional level, that we don't discuss the big pieces of it and what it really means in moving forward in this environment. So we're going to spend some time on this moving forward, because if we don't do that, I think we're on a path, a very difficult path moving forward. It's about inclusive leadership. It's about understanding who we are, understanding our biases, not so we can get rid of them. We never get rid of biases. We never eliminate everything, but we can ask we can move forward with our eyes wide open. I'm cognitive of my bias, therefore I can work against them to ensure I keep my mind open to folks around, allow the contribution, have that team, that best possible solution space that's derived by the contribution of all. And I hope we'll have success moving in that direction, because if we're going to move forward, be successful with women, peace, security, at home in recruiting, retaining, advancing talent, abroad in interesting women and others that are non-white Anglo-Saxon men to do this hard work, we're still going to be suboptimal in the results that we get. So that's my philosophy. I've shot my organization when I arrive at Canadian Defense Academy. You can probably judge a little bit by some of the words I say, and now identify myself at the beginning that I'm not a traditional general flag officer. That was really hard for our Army fellows. It took them a little while to, what does that mean? Who's this guy? What is it? But they're getting it, okay? And it's about, we have structures, we are built a certain way, and we need that structure because we need these authorities. Eventually someone is responsible to make the decision, and then we get into obey all lawful orders, okay, and duty before self. But it's about preparing the ground for the decision maker to make the best decisions possible. And that's when rigidity is an obstacle to achieving that. I spent many years studying, as I was mentoring young officers to become submarine captains, studying marine incidents around the world, particularly submarine incidents around the world. Some were pretty awful, but there's a thematic that always came back. The leader who thought he knew everything and didn't listen to folks around them as they were reporting bizarre situation or new information created the environment for the incident to take place. So I'm a firm believer that shedding some of our rigidity, being inclusive in our scoping, brainstorming, scoping out the problem, defining solution space, but then being decisive in following our great discipline that we have into deliberate planning and delivery of effect to create the condition for success so that the rest of the apparatus that it be NGO, that it be other government department, that it be economic development, that it be this, that, to build what is essential for sustained peace and stability up. And I think there's a coexistence, there's a great ecosystem. It's been proven time and time again in history. But when we lose track of all of these steps and the crucial contribution of all these steps in the path to peace and stability, that's where we falter, and we end up creating an environment where we just come back later. And we ask ourselves why. Why did we fail? So hope we can move forward from this. I look forward to hearing everybody's contribution in the next 2 days. I expect, I hope, to be in this role of champion until I retire, which is nowhere near now, although I've maxed out my pension as of, well, in 16 days. But that's okay. I don't have to quit as a reason for that. I intend to. I have a passion for this, and I want to do it till I quit. I'll be hopefully running the education system for another few years, and then I look forward to a continued relationship with this forum moving forward. Thank you so much.
So, Admiral, we have a couple of books for you to take away with you, and these
Wonderful.
are both
I love books.
from Watson
My
scholars.
movers don't.
Dr. Moffitt's most recent book, Making Policy Public. We'd like to give that to you.
Thank you very
And
much.
then Uri Bar-Joseph and Rose McDermott, Intelligence, Success, and Failure, The Human Factor. These are two really great folks. I know one of them, and I think you'll find both of these very interesting.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much
so
for coming. Really
It was
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure, Mayor. Thank you so much.